May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Converas?
Here.
Councilwoman Peterson? Here. Councilman Tanella?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Here.
Mayor Sakala?
Here. Will everyone please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting was duly provided to the Verona Cedar Grove Times and the Star Ledger by email and published in an annual schedule of meetings December 28th, 2018, filed with the Township Clerk, and posted on the Public Bulletin Board in the Municipal Building lobby in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. On the agenda, item 2, approval of minutes, 2A.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Have roll call, please.
Councilman Converas?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tanella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Excuse me. Item 3A, award of bid to consider resolution concerning award of bid for reconstruction of Bowden Road.
Be it resolved that the award of bid be made to AJM Contractors of Clifton, New Jersey in the amount of $417,895.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Converas?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tanella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. The meeting is now open to residents of the township wishing to be heard on any item on the agenda.
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Burns. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Paul Burns, 2 Elm Drive. The only question I got is, my wife, Susie, was trying to get the agenda, and I just don't know how to do it. How do we do it? It won't come up.
Where are you looking?
She went on a computer, she went on the Cedar Grove website, and it's just not, she can't find it. And
Okay.
it's not the first time. Is there a secret?
Well, the website has changed, as
Oh.
you know. So you access it a little bit differently now. But last week I did have a conversation because somebody else, another resident, brought it to our attention that you weren't able to access it right from the homepage. So I thought that had been resolved. Okay. But there are multiple ways to obtain the agenda, and if you want, Mr. Burns, I can show you from the computer.
Okay.
If you have time during the day, but you would go into government, go to the
Me and the
municipal.
computers don't work, so it's,
Okay.
Susie's gotta deal with it,
You
but,
go into, you access the government link, go to the municipal clerk's page, and go down to the 2018 council meetings, and it should pop up there.
okay.
You have to click on it.
She's
to-
watching, so I'm sure she watched, she
Okay.
heard that. And that's what
If
it's
not,
about.
she can call me, and I'll be
Okay.
happy to talk her through it
All
while
right.
she's at the computer.
All right, that's the only reason I wanted to bring it up, because it was there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
That's all.
There was also a,
Just
There's also a comment, Mr. Tucci, last week. I know you were on vacation, but the website, which is excellent, is and really I'm glad that we actually have a new website, and it's very user friendly. But there was some comments that on a mobile device, which I haven't yet tried, people were having trouble. So maybe we can talk to the webmaster about optimizing it for mobile devices. Since that's how-
Not a problem. I mean, every new application has some tweaks here and there, and again, it needs some getting used to, as the clerk said, familiarity with
Absolutely.
the public. I mean, we're learning the ins and outs of it right now, but it's not a problem. We will follow up on that.
Great, thank you.
But hopefully, it seems a lot more user-friendly, and the operations on our end are easier also.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, is there any other residents wishing to be heard under that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. This is item 5, reports of township officials, and Good evening, Mr. Tucci. Welcome back.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor. I have nothing as far as a report, but I have two items for confidential. One is regarding the tax appeal settlement on the property at 1384 Pompton Avenue, and the second one is potential tax litigation on a property on Fairview Avenue. So I would like those two for confidential, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. Ms. Stutz?
I have two items. The first is a reminder that tomorrow there is a special school election, and the polls will be open from 2 to 8 p.m. So instead of the usual 6 a.m., the polls open at 2 p.m. tomorrow and close at the usual time at 8 p.m. And the other item I have is, during the week, I received 2 letters of interest, one in response to a Recreation Advisory Board vacancy, and the other, I'm not 100% certain that it is a bona fide letter of interest, since I haven't received a response yet to my responding email, but it was for a member, for a vacancy on the Downtown Advisory Committee. So,
Should we have them come in to?
that's what I was
Is that-
wondering, if you wanted me to schedule those
Council-
appointments and
Yes.
any other
That's
letters
good,
of
Mayor.
interest that I get
Yes.
in the interim, I would also put onto that
Yes.
executive
Is that-
session at
everyone okay with
6:30
that?
before your next meeting, the staff meeting.
Any objection?
No objection, Mr. Mayor. One question. Have both positions been advertised yet?
There were actually 3 vacancies. One was an RAB, Downtown Advisory Committee, and Advisory Health Council. And yes, there's a notice up on our website, and there's been notice made to tap into.
Okay. Is there a deadline for?
There is, and I believe it is probably the Thursday before your 15th meeting, which may be the 12th of October.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Stutz. Mr. Zelinski?
No report this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Council reports, Councilman Tanella?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple items. You know, last week's meeting was a great meeting, I think, for the town. We had an opportunity to really provide a lot of information to the public on the issues that are facing us with regard to affordable housing and how it's impacting our community. 2 weeks ago, during a public meeting, last week's staff meeting, we talked about a couple things. One being letting the residents know that we heard the concern from the residents, obviously, that this issue is at a state level. It's not at a community level. So one of the things that we wanted to do as a council is provide an opportunity for our residents to meet with our state leaders. So I had reached out to our state senator, Kristen Corrado, and along with herself and our 2 assemblymen, Assemblyman Rooney and Assemblyman Phillips, they are going to come here for a special town hall meeting on Monday, October 29th at 7 o'clock. And we as a council will have a very similar format as we did for that special public meeting, to provide the residents an opportunity to ask any questions and all questions that they have of our state leaders about this issue and what's going on in Trenton. I know when I spoke to Senator Corrado last week, she had mentioned that there are several pieces of legislation being discussed, proposed in Trenton, and I think that's one of the many issues that we can talk about at that meeting as a first next step. Another thing that we talked about is to create a subcommittee within the council. So at last week's meeting, I proposed to create a Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And myself and Councilwoman Peterson, we're going to sit on that committee. We have 3 residents who are interested in being a part of it. Those residents are Bridget Bauer, Isabel Spagnardi, and Kevin McVeigh. So the 5 of us are going to get together, most likely before that town hall meeting. And then the intent is to continue the discussion of the impact of affordable housing on this community beyond Cedar Grove. we want to be leaders in this issue. So the five of us will get together, we'll discuss, we'll put together an agenda, we can bring it back to the council as we continue to move forward. But I think the first step is to have that town hall meeting, and then as our committee starts to create ideas and come up with different suggestions, we'll bring it back to the council and we'll be able to report to the residents. And then lastly, I think one of the only issues that was new to me, and I think new to this council, that we heard at that special public meeting was when the special master indicated that once we satisfy our affordable housing obligation today, which we are working on, at that point in time, if we go ahead and acquire as a township open space, that open space could be, or would be precluded from being in, would be included in the calculation for our next round, which is set for, I believe it's 2025. I mean, we heard a lot of troubling things that night, but I think one of the biggest things was that when the special master said, when we asked her, when will this end, and she said it's never going to end. And hopefully, this advisory committee will be part and parcel of communicating the concern that our town has, as well as joining with other towns that have the similar concerns, and voicing our concern to the state legislatures. But with regard to open space, I think it's important that we, as a council, investigate that aggressively, but also responsibly. And I know I spoke to the manager about this, and if we can put this on our agenda for our next staff meeting, we can talk about ideas and solutions that we can come back to, the residents with regard to this particular issue. And when I say responsibly, I think I had a lot of issues with the petitions that were circulated, but the one issue I had with the first petition is, I think the lack of information that was shared with regard to that petition. Because if, in that first petition that talked about acquiring open space, it's my understanding that if we were if that petition was going to go ahead and be successful, that that would require an immediate tax increase of the residents. And I think the number was anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 per household if we were going to raise $6.5 million. And I think residents would be hard pressed to sign on to something like that if they knew what the facts were. I think here, when I'm talking about responsible planning, is to look at our current inventory and come up with a responsible manner as to how we can go ahead and mitigate any future possible consequences with this affordable housing obligation that we're going to be looking at again in the not so near future. So I'd like us to talk about that more at our next staff meeting, and hopefully we'll come up with some solutions that can help this community. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Peterson?
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
And thank you very much, Councilman Sinella. I also just want to kind of add on to what you just said. In terms of the tax levy and even if people agree to that, it still doesn't, we still have to satisfy our affordable housing
Correct.
regulations. So even with the $6.5 million bond, and if we purchased all that property, we still have to build what we are required to build. So I just think that that's just
Agreed.
to kind of piggyback on what you said, and I'm looking forward to, and I think communication with the residents is a huge part of what we want to do, because I feel a lot of residents felt this was sprung on them. And, I just think if we keep the conversation going and communicating with residents, it's going to help the whole situation. And you know what? We can tackle this as a community, not as 5 people sitting on a council. And I think
Agreed.
that's the only way to move this needle. So, and then the only other thing I have, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The Recreation Department will again be hosting Real Panthers Wear Pink. That's on Thursday, October 18th from, I think, 6 to 8, right, at Panther Park. You can register. There's a link online. It's a great event. I participated in it last year. It's a lot of fun. There's a DJ. Everyone's walking around the track at Panther Park, and it's all for a good cause. So I just want to remind people of that. October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And there is Cedar Grove is part of a West Essex program called the Domestic Violence Response Team. And any member of our community can join this response team. Currently, I don't believe not that I'm aware of, that anyone from Cedar Grove belongs to this organization, but they're volunteers that are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they give a lot to domestic violence victims. So I was wondering if the council wouldn't mind that perhaps we can recognize them with a proclamation at the next meeting.
Any objection?
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. So, and what else do I have? I just wanted to also recognize members of our Municipal Alliance Committee. They've been really hard at work. They attended Cedar Grove High School Back to School Night and the middle school Back to School Night, handing out literature on vaping, which has become a terrible epidemic amongst our middle school and high school age children. And they've really provided a ton of information, and they're also organizing a program currently to be held in the middle school on vaping. And one other thing just kind of came to my attention regarding residents who are dependent upon medical equipment at home and power outages. Just so the public knows, PSE&G has a program, and I'm just going to this is on the PSE&G website. But if you or a member of your household rely on electricity to operate life-sustaining equipment, such as a respirator or dialysis machine, it's important that you notify PSE&G. PSE&G will send you a form that you can complete and sign and have your physician fill out. You send it back to PSE&G. They put you on a list, and when the risk of power outage is high due to forecasted severe weather, PSE&G will notify you by telephone of the potential for outages and the need for a contingency plan, since restoration times cannot be guaranteed. I just think it's really important because we do, I know, have residents that are dependent upon, life-saving equipment, and they need to know this information to contact PSE&G to get on that list. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Quintero?
Under the two referendums, I cannot speak about that, I assume, right, Josh?
For the two referendums?
The two petitions. Because that's, as a citizen and as a sitting councilman, I cannot make comments probably about that.
I believe that's correct.
Right. So I cannot defend the petitions.
But I don't know that the council meeting is the appropriate place to defend the petitions anyway.
Well, I would contradict the amount of the cost to the taxpayers pertaining to the $6.5 million. I still feel that the open space is very valuable to this town. I still think redevelopment of existing properties overpower destroying the available open space that we have remaining in this town.
Okay.
I think that's
so
all
I think you just,
that's all I can say on the
that's all- I
topic. I
think you
think
just,
I kept it as neutral as I possibly could.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. No report.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank Councilman Tanella and Councilwoman Peterson for coming up with the idea for the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. I think it's a great idea, and working with our with Senator Corrado and our Assemblyman, I think is a great idea to have him coming in there. So thank you for coordinating that. I do, Councilman Tanella, you mentioned the cost for the taxpayers for the tax levy, and I think it's important also to note that that money would be taxed and it would just sit there. It wouldn't guarantee any purchase. So the levy would be incurred by our residents, and it would just sit in a fund waiting for something to be done. And I think it's important to compare that to the purchase that we made with regard to the reservoir, where we worked hard to have that property in our negotiations with the city of Newark. And as you said, it's a great word, we made a responsible decision, and we will be working with our pilot funds and working on different funding options, so that way there is no or minimal impact to our residents with that. So I think that's a good point that you made, and I just wanted to highlight that. With regard to my report, Mr. Mayor, we have a Crafttoberfest through the Downtown Advisory Committee that is October 20th from 4 to 8 at LRP. That'll be in the parking lot. It is rain or shine. It's Crafttoberfest because we will have craft vendors there. We will have craft beer, and we will have crafts for the children, along with other music and other enjoyment. So I encourage you to attend. It's going to be a great event. Hopefully, it won't get rained out like our last two events did with Cedar de Mayo back to back. But actually, it is rain or shine, so it won't get rained out. The other, my next two items are questions for Mr. Tucci. Mr. Tucci, we've been working on the memorial for Bill Fearon, and I appreciate all your help and guidance to get us to that. I just wanted to see if there's an update as to when we can expect the plaque.
Actually, I spoke to the company representative today, again, as I spoke to him before I went on vacation on the 19th. The initial time frame was 5 to 6 weeks. I think he's narrowing it down to between 3 and 5 now. So I think the more pressure we put on them, I think we'll be able to close this gap. Hopefully, by the end of the month, we're going to have this plaque.
Oh, great, fantastic.
Hopefully. Yeah.
So then once we get sort of a harder ETA
Right.
on the plaque, we can make an announcement and we'll coordinate with Janice
A firm
Fearon.
date, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll coordinate with Janice on the proper way to dedicate the plaque.
Okay.
So, Mr. Tucci, one last item that I had here in my notes is the update on the crosswalk on Bradford.
The crosswalk on Bradford, there was a certification sent to the state of New Jersey on it.
Okay.
We're just waiting to hear back
Okay, great.
on that. Because what happens is, we contacted the county engineer, who referred us back to the fact that the township engineer under state law can certify it on our end. We did that, sent the certification down. I'm not sure what the process is once we get it back, whether it has to go back to the county or not. But at that point, we still have to get authorization from the county because this is a county road.
Okay, thank
The
you.
county's cooperating, so
We don't have any idea how long it would
That-
take from the state.
the state processing, that's difficult to call.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to also comment on what we were talking about, or what Councilman Tonello raised about the petition. And just to clarify, we talked about it at the staff meeting last week, but obviously that wasn't televised, and there were a few residents present. So just to clarify, to make sure everyone understands, and I think that it was raised, but we were kind of dancing around the topic. If the residents of this town voted to raise $6.5 million to buy open space, that $6.5 million could not come from a bond. You need to have a dedicated piece of property to bond. Otherwise, it's not legal to do. So if there was a vote to raise $6.5 million to put in a fund to purchase open space at some time in the future, the only way we can raise that money is by an immediate tax levy. So that means that we would have to raise $6.5 million in taxes this year. And when you take the amount of ratables that we have in the town, households and such, I think that Deputy Mayor and I figured it was somewhere around $2,300 to $2,400 per household. That would go, your taxes would go up immediately this year, $2,400. That would be on the average home. And I think that's what Councilman Tonello was referring to. Correct?
Mayor. Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure it was spelled out a little more succinctly, because my understanding from speaking to residents who were approached and who signed with the petition and who signed the petition, they were under the impression that there would be a bond. A bond would raise the $6.5 million, and that debt service would be paid off over 30 years, raising taxes a couple $100, whatever it might be. There was nothing stated, but in the petition. But it was a misnomer for many who, when I explained what I just said to them, they were shocked that they had signed a petition that would raise their taxes over $2,000 immediately. So I think that was the point.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question. When we purchased the Cedar Grove Reservoir property, and we're planning on using the pilot money, how are we gonna do that if there's no pilot money at this time?
Well, I think that we discussed that,
I missed the meeting.
Councilman, yeah. What was discussed was that we have currently an open space trust fund that has approximately $600,000 or $700,000 in it. So we have a dedicated piece of land, so it's legal to bond for that. So we bond for that dedicated piece of land, and we begin by paying the debt service off with the money that's already in the open space trust fund. And when the pilot money starts coming in, the open space trust fund will be diminished, and we'll start using the pilot monies to pay.
But isn't it true that the petition is dedicated to two specific properties? So the money is going to the lot and blocks of them two properties. So why couldn't that be bonded out?
You can't bond for a piece of property that you can't buy.
Why can't you purchase it? I don't understand. The
Why,
developer,
well, first of all,
the property owned on the one that I'm not gonna mention the name of, right, due to the conflict, right, is for sale. The property will be sold to whoever matches the money that the individual wants. So if the developer is getting, we're just using this as an example, $5 million, right? Couldn't the owner of the property at the present, the township can give him the $5 million, which is the same exact amount of money that he's purchasing from, what that developer is giving him?
I don't know, I've not spoken to the developer, have you?
No.
My understanding is that the developer has the property under, the owner of the property has the property under contract to a developer. So for us to go in and to try to undercut the person
Well, it's
who's
not
in,
undercutting, it's matching. I don't think that you would consider that. But if the ordinance didn't pass, that property is useless for the developer because he wouldn't be able to build that particular, that development on there. So the value of that property is at present. Once the property changes into the residential format that we have set, then that property becomes valuable.
well, Councilman,
I'm just curious, I'm just trying to figure that out there.
well, yeah,
Mr. Mayor, I think, let's not confuse the property, there is a contract on the property for purchase.
Subject to
So,
approval of the
but
zoning?
have you seen the contract?
No, but
Has it
isn't
been,
it?
but let me ask, has it been offered to you for sale? So in fact, as we all know, that Mr. Tucci, this property was subject to not one potential purchaser, but two purchasers, and there was a subject of litigation that Mr. Tucci had advised us of. So, to the extent, if it were available, we all would have made the responsible decision to attempt to purchase it. However, that contract, that litigation, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tucci, was going on for many years. And in fact, if I go back to my time when I was on the zoning board, which is well over 2 years ago now, there was an application to develop that was then rescinded by the first purchaser. So, there's not one purchaser, there were two potential purchasers on that
Correct.
property, and there's currently a contract on that. So it's, I liken it to this. If I'm trying to buy a house and I have a contract and an agreement to buy that
Right.
house, the town can't come in and buy that house because I have a contract to buy that house. So that house is no longer for sale. That house is so Cliffside Drive is no longer for sale. And I respect and I understand, I think what this council is trying to explain is that we are all in favor of preserving open space for the properties that are available. That property, Cliffside Drive, is a house that's already under contract, and you can't buy that.
Let me ask you a question. If the owner of the property is willing to sell us the property at the same price as the developer, will we purchase the property?
at this
It's a simple
point,
question.
we can't.
Mr. Mayor, just for a point of order, I mean, at this point, we're at your report in the meeting. So I just would like to kind of redirect the council back towards where we are in the agenda and the conversation to be had.
Mr. Zelinski, are you suggesting that I move on with my report and
I think it is the mayor's report, it is not the council's report, and I think that it should be your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Zelinski. This issue is actually probably an issue that we shouldn't even be discussing with Councilman Camboris even on the dais. I think if Mr. Semeraro were here, I think he would have probably cut this discussion off already. I'm actually a little uncomfortable even having this discussion anyway. So I'm going to move on past this discussion and just conclude my report. I just have a question for Mr. Tucci. Mr. Tucci, just a question on Cedar Street, if you have any updates. I know I was up there yesterday, and it's like an obstacle course trying to get up Cedar Street.
Actually, we were trying to get the contractor to pay it by the end of this week. It looks like it's gonna be next week,
Okay.
where the final payment will be done.
Is that pretty much what they have left to do, just that
It's
one
just
more
a
coat?
big-
And
Actually, they have a couple of limbs and branches. If you look down near Ridge Road, there's a big pile of branches, some cleanup. When they went through with the machine, they had to trim some limbs, but that's it. A little bit of cleanup and final pavement, and we're out of there.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. That concludes my report. We're going to move on the agenda to new business, item 6. And we have under 6, we have 6A, to consider resolution concerning renewal of inactive ABC license for Shoebox Incorporated.
Be it resolved that the existing alcoholic beverage license from Shoebox Inc. be approved.
Is there a motion?
So move, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question about the inactive. I'm not sure I understand I get that they're not using it, but they're still holding it. So why, Shoebox Cafe is an eyesore to town. I don't understand why they're still holding we only have very limited, licenses in town, and I feel that it's taking away from a restaurant that maybe we could get in to revitalize our downtown that could use that license. And I'm not well versed on it, so maybe I'm missing something, but I just wanted to ask I'm not comfortable voting on this until I quite understand why they're holding an inactive, and it's been, from my understanding, years that they have this.
And maybe Mr. Tucci can enlighten us, but
I'll explain it, I'll try to simplify it. Liquor licenses have value. So what happens, they hold that license, like owning property, as the deputy mayor said. So they own that particular property, meaning the liquor license. So unless they're willing to sell it, they, under state law, are allowed to maintain that license. And there's 2 statuses, the clerk will correct me, either you're an active license or you're an inactive license. So they're allowed to retain that license until such time as they either relinquish it by selling it, or they can reactivate it, make it active, and open a restaurant somewhere. So I don't know who the owner is right now, but that license is, according to state law, allowed to remain inactive until such time as they are willing to either part with it or reactivate it.
or if they lose it because of
Or
violations.
violations, which is gonna be pretty hard if they're not open.
Right.
But what if we didn't vote to renew it? Then,
You could, if I may, Mayor, through you, if you did not vote to renew it, the owner can then, file an action against the municipality.
Appeal process.
In the Office of Administrative Law, it is extraordinarily difficult for a township to take away an inactive license. The ABC has a policy that they do not want to facilitate that. They want the owner to be able to hold the license, as Mr. Tucci said, for them to determine either a time to reactivate it or a time that has value to sell it. So that's unfortunately the state of the law in New Jersey.
so it's just kind of a technicality for us to be doing.
I mean, the one thing the township can do is reach out to the owner, or have a dialogue with the owner to see what the plans are, to try to either bring the owner to a position where they want to activate the license, or to a position where they want to sell the license. So I would encourage the council to have a dialogue with the owner about what their plans are, and see if that dialogue can lead to the license becoming active.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, can we try to reach out and have that dialogue?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, if I may jump in, We've actually had some dialogue with, I think his name is Shilin, who is the owner of the shoebox. Now we're going back a year and a half ago, at a minimum, and through the Downtown Advisory Committee. At one point in time, he did express what Mr. Tucci explained was, I'm hoping at some point in time to sell it, or maybe, he said, open up another place. That hasn't come to fruition, and I've only heard through the grapevine that he is potentially trying to sell it. I have no other facts other than just rumor that I've heard through the Downtown Advisory Committee and through being in touch with the property owners, that some of the property owners are pointing any potential restaurants in that direction. That's all that I've heard. But I would ask Councilwoman Peterson, because I like where you're going with this, and I think it's important. I've raised this before with regard to the actual Shoebox Cafe, and the current state that it's in. And we've talked about, what, if anything, we could do to facilitate some type of growth there. And Mr. Tucci, the last time we spoke about this, you had coincidentally just issued some
We
citations
issued
that
some
day.
citations, they came to court, they did some preliminary maintenance, and, what happens is over time, whether it be the grass or whatever, that violation repeats itself. So we'll be back out there again. The same thing can be said for the former Meineke Muffler location, same thing. We've been in contact with the owner there as to what their plans are for that. I believe that that's gonna be on the market shortly also. So hopefully something's gonna redevelop there also.
Mr. Tucci, is there anything on the ordinance for blighted buildings or anything like that, that we could seek to enforce?
No,
No?
there is not.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Have roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Item 7, approval of bills.
Be it resolved that the summary of bills having been duly audited and found correct are hereby ordered paid in the amount of $53,938.10.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mayor.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Under item 8, contracts and agreements. Item 8A, to consider resolution concerning award of contract for professional engineering design services for reconstruction of upper playground at Community Park. Is
Be
there,
it resolved that the township manager is hereby authorized and directed to execute an agreement with Neglia Engineering Associates of Lyndhurst, New Jersey.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this is part of a partial grant that we got from the Community Development Block Grant. We had talked about this, I believe, at our budget hearings, that this playground equipment was gonna be cleared off and it's gonna be fully handicap barrier-free, and this is the design portion of that program.
Is there a time frame that we think that might be
It's
completed
probably
in?
gonna be, probably early summer, mid to late summer, because what's gonna happen is we'll have the design, we'll have the bid, and then by the time we schedule, it'll be into next year.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Item 8B, to consider resolution concerning award of contract for professional engineering design services for replacement of existing Church Street and Elm Drive water main.
Be it resolved that the township manager is hereby authorized and directed to execute an agreement with Neglia Engineering Associates of Lyndhurst, New Jersey for an amount not to exceed $8,900.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just to note that this money for this project is in the 2018 water capital budget that was authorized by this governing body.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. The meeting is open to residents of the township wishing to be heard on any item on or off the agenda concerning township business. Good evening, Ms. Harwick.
Good evening. Happy fall. We have at the county a number of events coming up this month to celebrate the Halloween season. We have a Strut Your Mutt costume parade coming up for Brookdale Park, South Mountain Dog Park, and the new Hilltop Dog Park. They will take place on October 20th and October 21st. And then we also have Gardens Aglow taking place on October 27th, I believe, at Presby Iris Gardens. But all of these activities are here in the fall newsletter, which I left copies of downstairs here at Town Hall. We also have a safe trick-or-treating event at Turtleback Zoo on Halloween from 4 to 8 p.m. With reduced ticket prices for that day. And coming up more immediately this Saturday is the Household Hazardous Waste Collection here in Cedar Grove on Fairview Avenue next to the Old Hospital Center. It's from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then on Saturday, October 20th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. will be the Computer and Electronics Recycling Day, which is in the same location on Fairview Avenue. And then new, or we haven't done it in a while, we are having a used tire recycling day on October 27th, and that will take place at the Public Works Building on Bradford Avenue here in Cedar Grove. And those events and activities are in the postcard mailer, which is also a couple copies downstairs below. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Are there any other members of the public wishing to be heard? Now, Mr. Burns, you told me that we already heard from you tonight.
No, I wanted to stop. I had a couple of you, see, you dragged me back in. Paul Burns, 2L. Let's see. Taxes. My question was for that was a while ago. We're raising the taxes, talking about raising the taxes, and we're having more building. And a question that that's been floating for a lot of people, you know, was why are we raising our taxes when we're building more? We're building more houses. Everything's getting built. Is it because we're losing our factory life? Is that what's going on? I don't understand why the taxes go up when we're building more housing. You know, a kid just asked me today, and he says, we're building, and the taxes keep going up. So explain that. Can somebody explain that to me?
Well,
Nobody knows. I got a good question.
First of all, I'm not, when you're talking about building, you're talking about the Hilltop, you're talking about
yeah,
the
about
proposed
everything,
development
yeah,
on
sure.
Cliff. Okay, they're not built yet, and they're not ratables yet. We're not collecting taxes on those yet. And there'll be a pilot coming from the Hilltop. The other piece of property, when and if it's ever built, there'll be taxes raised, taxes levied, but whatever your taxes at.
One question before you finish. I'm sorry. He hates when I do that, but
That's past
when,
tense.
I know. When you have more people paying taxes, wouldn't that reduce your taxes?
Well, you have more services to provide for when you have more people, right? So then and I'm only talking hypothetically now, you understand, but your cost of providing services to the public goes up if you have more public to.
Mayor, maybe I could just jump in here. First of all, Cedar Grove has one of the lowest local tax rates. Our tax rate only went up 2 cents this year, which is very, very low. The rest of the tax increase can be attributed to either county taxes or school taxes. So when we talk about taxes, we need to quantify what we're talking about. Are we talking about local tax rate? Are we talking about county tax rate? Or are we talking about school tax rate? But as far as the local tax rate, that has been very, very stable for a very long time. We have either been the lowest or one of the lowest for probably the last 10 years. So, you know, you just can't generalize and say, you know, why are the taxes going up? Second of all, everybody has increases, whether it be electricity, power, salaries and wages, so on and so forth. And even with everything that's going on, Cedar Grove has maintained one of the lowest or the lowest. I can't keep emphasizing that. Our local tax rate is bare bones minimal. So, the other point I want to make is this. When you say the taxes are going up, the Hilltop property right now is under construction right now. We haven't really seen the effects of the rateable base. The effect may be, and I'm not guaranteeing this, may be either you may have a flat rate from here into the future, or you may even see a decrease with that rateable base. But until that comes to fruition, we're not gonna know what the general impact is. The council has a lot of things on its plate, purchase of the North property, we have a new communication system for the fire department, we have for police department, we have a new fire truck coming. So there's a lot of things coming down the pike that we're gonna try to balance this out. But as far as raising taxes, I don't understand the question, and I don't see, as far as the local rate, where that question's coming from. I hope that clarifies something.
You know, it does clarify it, and Mr. Burns, I think that the point is that when you're talking about your taxes being raised, or what are they being raised? Are you talking about your school taxes? Are you talking about your county taxes? Talking about your local taxes? You just heard from Mr. Tucci. Our local taxes are very, very stable, and that's what we as a council control. We don't control the school taxes. We don't control the county taxes. So, you know, that's a different animal altogether.
Well, I appreciate the answer. Thank you. Involved with this affordable housing. I'm in contact with a few people. I don't need to get into it who, but talking about our neighbors to the north, who are people. They're counties with a lot more open space. Okay, it seems to me, and what this person who was a member of a board up there, said they don't have the issue of being swallowed up by the state, telling them what we need to do is you need affordable housing. You know, is it because we are such a small town that we're being targeted to make sure that we have affordable housing? Because if you go to for instance, in Washington County, Washington, okay? You're talking about rural, okay? And that Mount Laurel agreement just doesn't seem to be an issue up there because they don't have as much of a dense area. Why are we being targeted? Because we are a dense area. We have a lot of, we don't have a lot of building left, you know? I hope I'm being clear with this, okay? Because they can build. They got property all over the place, but now we got tiny little areas around here that we don't have much area for free space as it is. But then now you go out to New Jersey, and the woman said that the judge is going to rule. Whatever the judge says is going to be the way it is. But why is Cedar Grove, I don't know Verona, but our areas, okay, we're tight. If you go out and you go into an area that's a lot of fields, a lot of everything, you know, they could build whatever they want, but we're being isolated to build. I just don't understand it.
Well, a couple of things, Mr. Burns. First, I can't speak, and I don't think anyone on this dais can speak for our neighbors to the north or any other municipalities in the state of New Jersey. We can only deal with the hand that we're being dealt, and that's what is going on here in Cedar Grove with our affordable housing obligation.
Right.
In terms of what you were asking about the other municipalities and the way you phrased your question, you may have just answered your own question in the question that you posed. I mean, I think that you raise some salient issues in that question. But here's what we're going to do, and Councilman Tinella and Councilwoman Peterson talked about it a little bit earlier. We're going to bring our state representatives here, and they're not going to be able to tell you, well, we don't have any answers because we're only dealing with Cedar Grove's obligations. They're going to be able to talk to us, and it's going to be an education for all of us. I don't pretend to be an expert on what's going on in the affordable housing litigation and legislation outside of our town. I got some on-the-job training, as we all did over the last year and a half from being on this council, but it's specific to Cedar Grove. We're going to bring our state legislatures in here. They're going to come in on October 29th, and we'll have our senator, and we'll have our 2 assemblymen, and I hate to kick the can down the road even further, but let's ask them that.
Yeah.
Let's find out what they say the answer coming out of Trenton is as a result of the things that you
My
raised.
whole issue is, it's not just Cedar Grove. You're talking about Mount Arlington. These are areas that they want the property. They want us to bow to whatever they want. And I just don't understand it. It makes no sense. Okay, why you're doing the residentials for Essex County? Maybe it's not just Essex County, but maybe it's just a tight area close to New York City. And it just seems to me, if they want to really hold it to the law, go out a little bit. Just like people in Brooklyn, like the poor gentleman was talking about. He had to leave. He had to leave from New York, and he came here, and now they're pushing him out. They're going to push him out more. Bottom line is, nobody's pushing them out but the government, and we know that. This is our great state of New Jersey, and I think blighted buildings. I'm glad you brought that up. Talking about somebody brought it up. I'm talking about we have areas of the town that aren't being taken care of. Okay, there's a street right on my street, Church, okay? And it just seems like people get away with it. Nobody seems to know who owns the properties, I don't know if that's the problem or not, but I agree with it. If we're gonna clean up, we gotta clean everything up. Don't let we can't let these people just be filth. Filth is, we wanna make New Jersey pretty, City Road pretty. Everybody's gotta be involved, So the blighted area I'm talking about, you're talking about certain buildings, certain houses, and it just seems like they get away with it and nobody's cleaning it up. I think I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, but which is the house behind the bank. Okay, let me be specific.
Santander?
But there's a few.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
Mr. Burns, I'm glad you brought that up, because as you know, I obviously agree with that. I do want to add on to your comment. There's, Mr. Tucci, there's a building, it's a red building, next to the Union Street, the jewelry store on the corner there, that is falling into some disrepair as well.
I don't mean to interrupt you,
Sure.
but that property is subject to site plan design as we speak.
Okay.
The owner has been in, they're gonna be submitting an application on that. He's been going back and forth with plan for probably about 2 years.
Okay,
So, he had gotten a violation notice about 2.5 years ago. But there is plans in the works for that.
beautiful. And then, Mr. Burns, I feel your concerns about feeling singled out right now with regard to the affordable housing. It's one of those things where we've all been working on this for a year and a half, and then to provide all that information in a 4-hour session, it's a year and a half worth of information that we're providing to the community in a 4-hour session. So I understand where you're coming from and the feeling. So we've all done some research over the year and a half to see, are we the only ones? I think you heard Miss McKenzie say at the meeting that she was here that I believe it was Verona and Caldwell are going through some similar issues right now, and we just haven't heard them because their residents will hear, just like our residents heard the same thing, unfortunately. But also, when you go down the list, and I tried to look at the surrounding communities, Woodland Park, also, Mayor Keith Kasmark held a town hall meeting, I want to say it was in August, to address his affordable housing needs. As you heard, Verona and Caldwell from Miss McKenzie. I know West Caldwell and also Glen Ridge. There was a recent article on Glen Ridge where there was a large affordable housing.
Therein lies my whole issue.
So it's unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate, but I just wanted to address your comment. I think you said, what do the other surrounding towns look like, and they're
again,
dealing with similar issues.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Again, it's, you're talking about an area that are condensed already.
Correct.
We don't have that much room left.
Yeah.
You go 15 miles, you got all the room in the world,
Yeah.
So I don't understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Are there any other residents wishing to be heard? Seeing none, close that portion of the meeting. I want to add that I just want to, on top of the executive that we're already going into, I'd also like to add executive session point on the acquisition of property and the petitions. So with that said, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting of the mayor and council in certain circumstances, and whereas the mayor and council of the Township of Cedar Grove are of opinion that such circumstances exist, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the Township of Cedar Grove, County of Essex, and State of New Jersey, that the public shall be excluded from discussion of any action on the executive session of the meeting of the mayor and council of October 1st, 2018. The general nature of the subject matters to be discussed is a tax litigation, a tax appeal, acquisition of property, and petitions. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public as soon thereafter as deemed in the public interest to do so. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? May I have a motion to,
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor? Good evening. Thank you for coming.